Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us. I'm Karen Cross, CEO of the Greater Kingston Chamber of Commerce. Welcome to this all-candidates debate for the Kingston and the Islands. We hope that the next hour is informative and helpful in you deciding how to vote in the upcoming federal election. Before we begin, I'd like to take a moment to thank all the candidates for participating today and for putting their time, energy, and resources into their individual bids to represent us in the House of Commons. A few housekeeping notes. The debate will begin with opening statements by each candidate, followed by a series of questions. We'll then take a few questions from the audience, and each candidate will provide a closing statement. Today's debate is being taped and if you wish to rewatch, we can visit Greater Kingston Chamber of Commerce Facebook page later today. We'd also like to take a moment to thank our sponsors today, the Kingston and Area Real Estate Association. We can't do these events without sponsorship, so again, thank you to them. And to say a few words on behalf of the association, its president, Matt Clancy.
Hello everyone, my name is Matt Clancy and I am the 2021 President of the Kingston and Area Real Estate Association. I would like to thank the Greater Kingston Chamber of Commerce for the opportunity to sponsor this event and to say a few words. The Kingston and Area Real Estate Association represents over 620 members. We are realtors who live and breathe real estate. We are also sport coaches, we are volunteers at your local church and local animal shelter, and some of us are even ex-teachers and ex-police officers. We are your neighbors, we are your friends, we are your family, and we live and work where you do. Buying and selling real estate is a very intricate process. Working with a local realtor means you can be confident that you are getting the advice from someone with an intimate knowledge of the local housing market. We know the comparable prices, neighborhood trends, housing market conditions, local issues, and more. Using a local realtor is the best way to ensure that your transaction is completed competently and professionally. When you're making one of the biggest financial decisions of your life, we have the training, the experience, and the negotiation know-how to help you avoid a costly mistake. The bottom line is, the best asset when you're buying or selling real estate is a local realtor. Before my time ends, housing affordability and housing supply are a big part of the national conversation this election. Realtors know that our clients and the local community are concerned that home ownership is slipping out of reach. We see firsthand the anxiety, the frustration, and the heartbreak today's housing market can cause. Now, everyone has their own opinion about why the current housing market is so treacherous, but the simple truth is, housing prices are high because of lack of supply. Lack of housing supply is driving up the cost of buying a home, beyond the reach of many Canadians. More housing supply can lower prices, reduce stress, and give buyers a fighting chance. More housing supply means more opportunity. Please keep that in mind, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, Matt. And again, thank you to Kingston Area Real Estate Association for sponsoring today's event. Now I'd like to introduce our moderator today, who probably needs no introduction, Bill Hutchins, Global Kingston. Over to you.
All right, thank you, Karen. I am pleased to be here today. Thanks to the Chamber for inviting me to moderate today's forum and for allowing me to wake up extra early. Candidates, it is exciting time to meet you. I wish this forum could be in person, but things being the way they are, at least we can still be able to hold this important meeting. And the Chamber members watching, thank you for your interest in this very important part of our local democracy in action. It's a chance to hear from the candidates firsthand, to engage with them a little later when I open the floor to questions from the audience. Please start thinking about the questions you might have for the candidates. We'll have time for a few questions later on in the presentation. Though we will not have time for all questions, we do thank everyone who takes time to submit one. So my role in this debate is to pose questions to the candidates, keep us on track, and help with timekeeping where possible. And note that we're also looking for questions for all of the candidates. So if you do have a question for a specific candidate, please contact them directly following this debate. So to ask a question, please use the Q&A button located within your Zoom controls. Now, finally, and this is a technical thing that I'm sure we've all experienced over the last year and a half, if a candidate should experience an internet disruption during their response, we will wait a few seconds to see if we're able to reconnect and complete their time. And if they do not, we'll need to move on in order to respect the time that our audience is committing to this event and each candidate's schedule. So let's move on to the opening statements now. We've placed the candidates' names in a hat to determine the opening order. Each candidate will have up to 3 minutes for their opening statements. And we're going to start first up with the People's Party of Canada candidate, Shelley Sale-Udall. Go ahead, please.
Morning. Thank you for inviting me to this debate. I am Shelley Sale-Udall. I'm from the People's Party of Canada, and I'm here to represent the people and speak to the people of Canada about the issues that we currently face, and whether it be climate change, Indigenous concerns, our economy that's in desperate need of repair right now, carbon taxes, affordable housing, or anything like that we're going to be talking about today. My first order of business is for the people, and it's going to be talking about our rights and freedoms and repairing our Constitution that has been crumbling with each passing day, and it seems to be getting worse and worse. And I want to focus on the degradation of our rights that are causing segregation and division. And unlike most typical elections, this is a new election that I think is going to be historical. Anyway, I'm hoping that I'll be able to answer lots of questions today so that people will be able to get to know me.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have Dr. Waji Khan with the Green Party. Go ahead, Dr. Khan.
Hi, good morning. Thank you, Bill. My name is Dr. Waji Khan. I'm a dentist in Kingston, Ontario. But more importantly, like many of you, I'm a small business owner for many years. I have a Master's of Business Administration degree from Dalhousie University, and business is something which has always been something I've really enjoyed from my days of being a high school student in Mecca and DECA, and participating in a number of forums. I decided to put my name forward for office or public office. So right now sometimes I'm wondering why, with all the wonderful comments we get sometimes, but definitely an admiration for people like Mark and career politicians who have had to endure this sort of stuff. But much of my reasons for pursuing office was because I was just increasingly concerned about the conduct and actions of the current Liberal government. And as a retired officer in Her Majesty's Loyal Canadian Forces, I just couldn't sit still and say I need to put my name forward and serve my country. So we're here to talk to the Chamber of Commerce, and ultimately we're here to talk about business, right? And what we need to do is we need to get Canada back on track, and we need to get Canadians back to working. And how are we going to facilitate this? So the CERB definitely was a great program to provide Canadians with assistance. However, it's a policy which long-term is basically being seen as something which is not providing an opportunity for small businesses to get people back to work. So it was what we need to do is we need to focus on reducing the costs of businesses in terms of how they consume resources. We need to be more economically efficient, and we need to provide monetary incentives to businesses that once they provide certain green thresholds, will waste less and save more. We need to focus on ensuring that small business owners who suffer catastrophic health issues or business failures get the financial help and training that they need to dust themselves off and get back into the game. This isn't corporate welfare or some sort of a handout, but a safety net in a basic income program that acknowledges that Canadians from all walks of life and socioeconomic statuses are too important to fail. The other thing we have to realize, ask yourself as a small business owner, did you ever think that we'd be in a pandemic situation like this? Neither were the fathers of Confederation. This is something which no one really foresaw. And so what we really need to do is imagine that many of our small business owners in a brick and mortar model were forced to move to a click and mortar model where we were a physical entity but relying upon a distribution network using technology that we weren't familiar with. So the government needs to work to ensure that this technology is robust, available, and it's going to be a going concern for businesses going forward. However, along with making accessibility to digital presences available for businesses, we need to cap large Silicon Valley delivery service company fees in Canada to prevent small restaurants and their customers from being gouged. So if this sounds good to you, this is something which the Green Party is there for you for, and I hope you can support me.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Khan. Next, we have Vic Sahai from the NDP, and your opening statement, please.
Thank you for this invitation. I'm Vic Sahai, your NDP candidate. It has been an honor to meet so many of you these past months, and you've come to know me as a passionate environmentalist, a social activist, and a public health activist. But let me be very clear that these things cannot happen without a strong and sustainable economy. And that means supporting our small businesses and mid-sized businesses who are the engines behind our economy. While small businesses bore the brunt of this pandemic, mega corporations became, because of the Liberals and Conservative policies, made billions of dollars. I and the NDP will impose a 15% excess tax on those corporations. We will close tax loopholes so Amazon, who paid zero taxes in 2019, can pay their fair share. We will use these monies to expend the pandemic wage subsidies, pay the employer's portion of the EI and CPP with new hires and rehires. We are proposing a universal pharmacare and dental care program, plans for everyone, which will reduce the cost of mid-sized and small businesses. I will fight for a guaranteed livable income, creating a floor for everyone, unleashing creative and entrepreneurial spirit and energy. We will create grants and loans aimed at encouraging new business startups. We will close tax loopholes for large corporations to level the playing fields so that all business can fairly compete. Lastly, we will lower the small business tax from 11% to 9%, which, by the way, was agreed by the Liberals, but yet another broken promise. In 2019, mid-sized and small businesses created 90% new jobs in Canada. But who gets the royal treatment? It is the Amazons of the world, the Walmarts, the Haviland, who seems to have their own lobbyists in the Prime Minister. But be reassured that I and the NDP have your backs, and we will support you in any way that we can. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sahai. And I'm not sure if you know this, but your camera was turned off for that opening statement.
I apologize.
That's okay. That's okay. It's on now, and we'll move forward, and people will be able to see you as you respond to questions moving forward. So thank you again. Next, we have Gary Oosterhoff from the Conservative Party.
Good morning, everybody. It is a pleasure to be here this morning. Even by Zoom, we are learning to make the best of it, aren't we? It will be amazing to be together, but that time is coming, and we are working towards a better future together. Thank you to the Chamber for hosting this event, and to Korea for sponsoring this event. Also to everyone for helping to make this happen. This morning is important to me and to us because, to me, I'm a longtime member of the Chamber and a supporter, and I do feel at home in a business context and atmosphere. Now, if I get asked a really tough question, I'm going to ask you to ask me an electrical question, because I'm a career electrician and licensed electrical contractor, and I'm quite comfortable in that realm as well. But here I am in the electoral realm, and I am rapidly getting up to speed in this world as well. Certainly 5 years and more of being a city councillor representing the Countryside District has given me a unique perspective and equipped me in many different ways to stand here this morning as the candidate for the Conservative Party of Canada. I am incredibly proud to do so. When the call came from the party, I was actually packing our camper trailer in our driveway for a summer-ending yearly venture out, and it only took me a few minutes to say yes. Why? Because we need to secure the future for our children and our families. And so the end of summer venture this year has seen me canvassing with my family, 100% behind me. Also on that day, I became a first-time grandparent. It was a perfect summer day, and my experience of a new life of my grandson and thinking about his future and where we are at as a nation, I just couldn't say no. There is a serious amount of work to be done. I am so pleased that I can say I'm thrilled with the party platform, that it is a breath of fresh air for Canadians today. It's an in-depth, comprehensive document that is far-reaching and focuses on all the issues that matter for us today. And I truly believe that we can bring a positive message of hope and security for our city and our country. This election, it gives us a unique opportunity to bring change to Ottawa. This election call was and is unnecessary. The failure of our government to work together with all parties is the root of the problem. It is time to send a message to Ottawa to say no, enough of the nonsense, enough of the reckless fiscal mismanagement that we see. If there was ever a leader who does not deserve the unchecked powers of a majority government, surely that leader is Justin Trudeau. The time is now to vote for a party that cares, the party that will bring security and safety back to our country. Canada's Conservatives is that party. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Mr. Oosterhoff. And finally, we have Mark Gerritsen with the Liberal Party.
Thanks, Bill, and good morning, everybody. It's great to be back with you and to see all of my fellow candidates. Some of you I just recently met, and I can tell you that it's been an absolute honor to be running in this campaign with all of you. And thank you to the Kingston Area Real Estate Association for putting on and sponsoring today's event. Thank you to you, Bill, and the Chamber of Commerce for coordinating it and making it work in this difficult environment that we still find ourselves within. For those that don't know me, I'm Mark Gerritsen. I'm your Liberal candidate in Kingston and the Islands, and I've been extremely proud to represent Kingston over the past 6 years and look forward to the opportunity to continue that work if I am reelected. For the past year and a half, supporting Canadians through the pandemic has been the federal government's top priority. Keeping people safe, procuring and distributing vaccines, and providing financial relief when Canadians needed it the most has required an unprecedented and extraordinary effort. And I think we should all be extremely proud of not just the government, more importantly, our Public Service of Canada for coordinating a swift economic response and taking care of, in particular, those that were in need. Locally and across Canada, we helped our businesses, communities through programs like the Canada Emergency Wage Subsidy, the Canada Emergency Business Account, funding available through regional economic development agencies, and rent subsidies. As we move toward recovery, we will continue to support local business through extending the Canada Recovery Hiring Program and providing additional support for our hardest hit businesses within the tourism and hospitality sectors. We know that we must continue to support Canada's businesses, because when we do, we are supporting the workers, families, and communities that rely on them. Supporting businesses and their workers is at the heart of our plan to create jobs, strengthen our middle class, and continue to grow our economy. I believe at this pivotal moment, we have a unique opportunity, and it's an opportunity that presents itself to allow us to continue to build a stronger, healthier, and greener Canada for all. I'd finally just like to say that over the last year and a half, I've certainly come across many of the small business owners, whether you're contacting my office, looking for assistance with the various different programs that the government has put in place. And I've understood and felt your pain through those discussions, but I know that we are stronger and we will come back stronger because of the way that we've been able to collaborate together. So with that, I'm looking forward to the questions that you posed to us today, and I'll turn it back over to you, Bill.
All right, thank you, Mark Gerritsen of the Liberal Party. Thank you to all the candidates. So yes, we're now going to move into our prepared questions for the morning. A reminder that if other people watching have questions for all of the candidates, you can submit them via the Q&A button in your Zoom controls. So let's move on to the first question then. The Conference Board of Canada named Kingston one of Canada's hardest hit cities by COVID-19. How would you support the recovery of key sectors of Kingston's economy, such as tourism? Let's start with Mr. Khan. You have 1 minute, sir.
Thank you kindly, Bill. So from the perspective of being hard hit, the government did have a lot of programs which enable businesses to remain being a going concern. And by this, I'm specifically going towards the CERB, the CEWS, the rental assistance program, and the business grants that were given. However, one of the challenges in just speaking to business owners, having patients who worked in the restaurant, let's just be honest here, anybody who worked in the restaurant, tourism, hospitality, hotel industry, just devastated. Patients of mine who work in some salons and so many of the other aesthetic fields, just absolutely devastated by some of the rules that had to be put into place by public health. But nonetheless, these industries were hard hit. And lockdown after lockdown, getting back to work, having a lockdown, these weren't really good in terms of maintaining faith of the workforce and faith for these businesses going forward. So the first thing we need to do is we need to make sure that we are proactive in terms of our approach. We knew about SARS, we knew about H5N1, H1N1, and now we have SARS-CoV-2, which provides COVID. We need to ensure that we are going to have a situation like this in the future. We need to ensure that we are able to deal with these situations in a matter of months in terms of PPE and vaccine production, not years upon years of economic damage and damage to workers and their confidence in going back into those industries. So I don't have much more time. I'd love to talk a little bit more about the topic.
Okay, thank you. Next is we move on to Mr. Sahai.
So, as I said in my opening statement, we have to extend the wage subsidies. We have to do things like make sure that there is a rehiring process. That means paying EI, if we have to pay the EI portion and the CPP portion of new hires or rehires, then we need to do that. The other thing I think we need to do is look at things like a guaranteed livable income, where business owners can take chances. They can expand without worrying about whether or not they actually have an income. We want to propose things like pharmacare, for example, and dental care, so that we could take that burden off small businesses and make sure that they don't have to worry at least about that part of cost. How do we support the tourism? Well, I think what we need to do is to control this pandemic. We need to be vaccinated. We need to be even beyond vaccination, we still have to go back to prevention, which is about using your mask, social distancing, all of those things that the public health practitioners have told us. Because if we don't control this pandemic, we will continue to be in an economic mess.
Okay, Mr. Sahai, thank you. Your time is up. I know it's a complex question. You have 1 minute. Take a stab at it, Mr. Oosterhoff.
Good. Thank you very much for that question. A great question. And it's something that I think about all the time, certainly as a member of the Kingston Economic Development Corporation. We've seen significant efforts locally by our municipality and also involvement at all levels of government. And I really do think it's a bit of a partnership that way. But certainly we recognize that small business is the engine of our economy, and tourism for Kingston is something that's always there for us. And we're something really proud of. And I'm proud to say that we as a Conservative Party of Canada will be working very closely to get people coming back to Kingston. And it's not hard to do that because of the beauty of our city and surrounding area. But we'll be introducing a Dine and Discovery program along with exploring and supporting Canada through the initiative to encourage Canadians to support the recovery of the Canadian tourism and hospitality sectors. Conservatives will create a refundable 15% tax credit for vacation expenses up to $1,000 per person for Canadians to vacation in Canada. The Dine and Discover program is really great as well, because once it's safe to do so, Canada's Conservatives will support the recovery of the restaurant sector by providing a 50% rebate for food and non-alcoholic beverages. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay, thank you, Mr. Oosterhoff. So next up is Mr. Gerritsen. Let me just repeat the question again for the benefit of our audience. The Conference Board of Canada named Kingston one of Canada's hardest hit cities by COVID-19. How would you support the recovery of key sectors of Kingston's economy, such as tourism? Go ahead, Mr. Gerritsen.
Thank you, Bill. And we have a number of things that we've proposed. The first is that we are going to introduce an EI benefit for self-employed Canadians, which is delivered through the tax system, and that would provide unemployment assistance comparable to EI and lasts for as much as 26 weeks. The other thing that we know, and as it relates more specifically to Kingston, is that our tourism industry has been extremely hard hit. And that is why we're providing to support our tourism industry with temporary wage and rent support of up to 75% of their expenses to help them get through the winter. We are also going to extend the Canada Recovery hiring program to March 31st of 2022 so that businesses can get back on the job. What we've learned, Bill, over the last number of months is that our hardest hit sectors in business need these supports, and they need them fast. They can't be waiting weeks or months to get money in their bank accounts and need it immediately. And that's why we're proposing some very aggressive tools to make sure that businesses continue to be supported.
Thank you. Now we move on to Ms. Sale-Udall.
Thank you. My perception of these questions are a little bit different because I don't have the long time seasoned political brain that everybody else has. So when we talk about tourism and business, the People's Party will always allow people to continue what they need to do by making their own choice to protect themselves, as they always have, as we navigate reopening tourism. I know in Kingston, we were throwing people and telling people to stay away from us, but I think there's a way that we can bring communities back to see us. Like Gary said, we do have an amazing city, so people will come. But I think that there are other things that cost less money that we can do by involving community. There are lots of things and skills and abilities that people have that we can bring back. Guitar playing, we can create sort of like the buskers, but for Kingstonians, which will allow people to actually do things that they love to do and reignite them to help them heal through the pandemic and the loss of all these wonderful stress relieving strategies that they once have, and be able to be a community again. And when we are a community, people will love us as well. We've gone through all these issues in the past, but we can continue with the hygiene practices moving forward.
Thank you. Let's move on to our second question this morning. The average home price in Kingston has nearly doubled in the last 5 years. What would you do? What would you propose to address both housing affordability and supply for all Kingstonians? We'll begin with Vic Sahai.
So I've been knocking on doors these past few days, few weeks, and basically what we need to do is make housing more accessible. We are a party that will invest in 500,000 new affordable homes. We will invest in a mortgage system that is amortized over 30 years that will be insured by the Canadian Mortgage and Housing Corporation. We will ensure that there is a subsidy of $4,000 for those who need it, and also ensuring that there is up to $40,000 in terms of grants for those who are first-time buyers. But beyond that, what we have to do is to ensure that there is the supply that is actually needed. And that means encouraging builders to build affordable homes for all, not just for those who are rich. The other thing that we need to do is to put and we will do this, is to put a 25% tax on foreign ownership of residential homes.
Thank you. Thank you. Next, Gary Oosterhoff.
Thank you. That's a great question. And housing for me is going to be a really important file, and something that we used to always say, location, location, location. I've heard all of them say that. Well, it's about supply, supply, supply. And certainly sitting on the board of affordable housing in Kingston has, for all my time, has given me a unique view and involvement and an understanding of the need that we have right here in Kingston and across the country, and how much more we have to do. And one of the areas I've also sat on planning and on planning committees locally, and I really believe it's about policy and ways that we can influence change and build more homes. We need to be building more homes. It's supply and demand is driving up the price. And so we can do a lot better. And I believe that the Conservative Party of Canada will be influencing that in so many ways. And I believe that people are really concerned about the rising prices, and we can do a lot more, and we will be doing that for Kingston.
Thank you, Mr. Oosterhoff. On to Mark Gerritsen now.
Well, thanks, Bill. One of the ways we can increase supply is for City Council to start to relax some of the regulations that exist around some of the red tape in order to encourage that supply. So maybe Gary can assist with that. But in terms of exactly what we're going to do when it comes to helping people get into home ownership, is that we know that we need to get more people that are currently renting into a place of home ownership. And it's very disappointing when you hear that up to 40% of young people in their 20s out there don't expect to own a home in their lifetime. And this is extremely problematic, because as we know, people build their equity through their home. So one of the things that we're proposing is to allow Canadians to save up to $40,000 for their first home, to save that in a tax-free first home savings account. to encourage that saving. We're also looking and proposing ways to change the first-time home buyers incentive to be more flexible, to give Canadians the option of deferred mortgage loan. And then there's also the CMHC the mortgage insurance, which is at 25%, and we would like to lower that.
Thank you, Mr. Gerritsen. Sorry, it's only 1 minute, so I know it's a
no problem.
Question. Ms. Sale-Udall, let me repeat the question. The average home price in Kingston has nearly doubled in the last 5 years. What would you propose to address both housing affordability and supply for all Kingstonians? Go ahead, please.
So what the People's Party of Canada would look at doing is focusing on other issues that place less pressure on housing and affordable housing, such as restricting sort of immigration, as well as cutting off some of the monies to foreign aid. I mean, we need to focus on Canadians right now. It's wonderful that we can support other countries, but we're struggling here in Canada. So it's not like we're going to take money away, but we want to also lower taxes and keep money in the pockets of Canadians so that they have more money to be able to afford houses. And once we have more money, of course, and we're not filtering it out in different areas, we can use it for other things, you know, like seniors and veterans and those with limited incomes, including those that are homeless.
Okay, thank you. Finally, we have Dr. Waji Khan.
Thank you, Bill. So basically, we need to retain local talent and grow our supply of available workers. And like many of you and other small business owners, I too have faced challenges in the procurement of staff for my ever-growing practice here in Kingston. So we're going to need to increase the supply of available housing on two fronts. First, we have to incentivize home builders to focus on net zero emission homes through tax rebates and a direct investment in manufacturing and research. We'll also make green materials available, more affordable, and more importantly, made in Canada. We can leverage the fact that Kingston has 3 great post-secondary institutions that can pave the way for new technology through their hard work and dedicated research. On the second approach, we'll basically invest directly in affordable housing and units by setting metrics with our public and private institutions to ensure that the tax dollars that are being spent are being respected, and giving us some sort of performance guarantees in terms of the money the government spends. We're not just going to be writing blank checks to inefficient organizations. And B, we'll have healthy intensification that will lift people out of poverty by giving them access to transit service and walking access to most amenities. I'm going to ask you, Bill, $40 billion was dedicated, 2 years ago to building affordable housing units across Canada. So $4 billion a year. If you base the metrics from the Liberal Party, that's 20,000 units per year. We've had 2 years. Where are those 40,000 affordable homes? So you're asking what I'm going to do. One of the things I'm going to do is ask questions of our elected representatives and hold them accountable.
All right, thank you, Dr. Khan. And a reminder to our audience to get your questions ready for the candidates. As we move on to our third question this morning, diversity and inclusivity makes businesses more successful and contributes to better societal health. How would you support a more inclusive Kingston? Let's start with Mr. Oosterhoff.
Well, that's a good question. I think that, I've always felt that a rising tide lifts all ships. I think that when we build our economy together, we are an inclusive city already. I have experienced it in every way as a city councillor and in meeting all my constituents. And I think that we have a very healthy environment locally and a welcoming community. I've been part of groups that bring immigrants into Canada, into our places here, and I think it begins at home here. And I see it across the board this morning, and I think that we have the approach in this city that is very welcoming and inclusive. So I celebrate that every time I go out, and the people I meet, and with the smiles that I see along the way. We all know that we're in this together, and it's something that I live for and celebrate. Thank you.
Thank you. How would you support a more inclusive Kingston, Mr. Gerritsen?
Thank you, Bill. This is the most that you've ever called me Mr. Garrettson in one sitting, but I appreciate it. Listen, one of the very first city council committees I sat on was the accessibility committee at the city level, and I'll tell you, I learned a great deal of what accessibility was. It's so much more than just parking spaces or wheelchair accessibility, as it relates to people's ability to get information, as it relates to people's ability to access healthcare. But the most important thing is that we continue to push forward policies to make them more mainstream that encourage and incentivize businesses for being more accessible. And what we know is that something like 7 or 8% of businesses, a business can see 7 to 8% growth in their profits and their revenue, I should say, just by being more accessible. So, I mean, any initiatives that the federal government has, whether it's helping to support infrastructure upgrades, I will, or increase information or access, I'll always be a champion of that.
Thank you. Next is Ms. Sale Udall.
So the question is, how do I support a more inclusive Kingston? There's a few ways. As a mental health therapist, we have a lot going on with people in our city. We have a lot of struggles, a lot of people who are struggling. My inclusive Kingston includes everybody. I know the People's Party of Canada, we do not agree with vaccine passports and creating a two-tier society. Without vaccine passports, we can all be considered inclusive and equal, and we can all respect the diversity of, race, opinions, beliefs, and everything like that. But we need to work together, and when we work together and we appreciate each other, we love each other and like each other more, and we get along better. And everybody is included in that.
Okay, thank you. Let me restate the question. Diversity and inclusivity makes businesses more successful and contributes to better societal health. The question, how would you support a more inclusive Kingston? Mr. Khan, 1 minute for your reply.
Thank you, Bill. As I go down to Bubba's down on King Street, not to simplify the situation, but there's this great newspaper clip about Canadian Canada in general and how we can maintain Canadian unity. And the gentleman Bubba's felt that poutine was the means by which we could do that. I remember that article from my days down at Queen's. So I'm not going to say poutine, but I just thought of that when you said that to me. But what I'm really focusing on is the fact that we are all Canadians and we're all in this together. As Canadians, if you travel across the world like I have, one thing you'll realize is that we are fairly tolerant people, and we are accepting of our differences, and many of our differences also bring us together. What we need some sort of program by which Canadians from all walks of life and socioeconomic status can come together, and we realize that Canada and Canadians are too important to fail. So programs like a basic income to bring people to parity with respect to what they can afford in terms of food, healthcare, education. Programs like universal dental care, universal child care, addressing issues related to affordable housing. If we can develop programs that address these things, they will bring Canadians together.
Thank you, Mr. Khan. And finally, Mr. Sahai. You're muted, Mr. Sahai.
Sorry.
Yeah, there you go. Okay.
Can you just repeat the question?
Sure.
I'm not quite sure if we answered it.
Well, how would you support a more inclusive Kingston?
Okay, excellent.
Yeah.
So from my point of view, what I'm going to talk about is how do we encourage business owners to be more inclusive and diverse. So for example, having grants that are specifically geared to minorities and Indigenous people and women, for example. How do we do that? We can actually do that through government programs. The other thing I want to talk about too is just giving people the opportunity to get into the business. So having a guaranteed livable income, for example, will give people that security to get into the restaurant, tourist business, or whatever entrepreneurial business that they wanted to be a part of. The other thing I think we need to do is to be more culturally diverse. So things, you go downtown and you see all these wonderful restaurants. We need more of that. So the Asian restaurants, the Indian restaurants, the different supermarkets, we really need to encourage that diversity.
Thank you.
Within our own population.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Sahai.
Okay.
And now for a final prepared question before we open things up to the audience. The question is, unemployment remains the highest it's been in several years, and yet many businesses are having difficulty hiring. What solutions would you propose to get Kingston working again? Let's start with Mr. Gerritsen.
Thanks, Bill. That's an excellent question. Unemployment is high right now, but I think it's worth pointing out that when we went into COVID in the early part of 2020, we had the lowest unemployment rate in recorded history in Canada for the unemployment. We started recording it in the 60s and it had been the lowest. And we always knew from the beginning, we need to get back to that same place. And that's why through the investing in businesses and people in Canada, we've seen 92% of the jobs lost during COVID recovered, whereas as a comparable, the US has only seen 75% recovered. So it's by having programs like the hiring program that we're putting in place. It's by having programs that have been there to support businesses like the wage subsidy program and extending those into the winter for certain sectors. That's the way that we're going to ensure that we can get back to those record low unemployment rates that we were at prior to going into the COVID pandemic.
Thank you. Next is Ms. Sale Udall.
All right, the question had to do with getting people off unemployment. Is that, sorry?
Well, the question was, unemployment is high, very high. It has been in several years, and yet many businesses are having difficulty hiring staff.
Right.
So what solutions would you propose to get Kingston working again?
Okay, well, and that's actually a really good question, because I wonder if some of that is the result and the aftermath of the pandemic that we just went through. I know several businesses that I've attended are having difficulty hiring staff because they can't find anybody. And I know I was talking with some other people about the CERB, and that some people were making more money being on a government subsidy. And I think what we need to do is work on helping people feel better about life so that they want to be back out in the community and not fearful or worried and are wanting to stay home because they're in fear of another pandemic, fear of another wave of different things. With the lockdowns, we've created a lot of that. So I have a feeling that a lot of people just don't want to go out because of this fear. But people need to be productive. I mean, we are humans and we feel our best and we feel happiest when we are able to be productive. And so to help people feel safe and secure, it's okay to go back to work and to leave their home.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Khan, you have 1 minute to answer the same question.
Thank you, Bill. So in terms of getting our unemployment numbers down, I think one of the issues that we're looking at is when the CERB first came out, the CERB was a means by which to ensure that, I mean, let's face it, most Canadians were $200 away from being broke. And had the government not created a program to put money into the pockets of Canadians, we would have had some serious domestic unrest. So that was a good program then. However, what it's done now, it's basically incentivized people to not return to work, which I'm not trying to say that people don't want to work, but it just highlights the fact that the CERB was not a solution. It's not a path forward. What it highlighted to me was that we're not focusing on, I mean, the Liberal representative here has basically stated that 92% of jobs we have recovered as compared to the States. So we're talking about what? Minimum wage jobs, the gig economy. These, what you're basically telling me is that people don't want to work for these low levels of amounts of money, which aren't even enough to sustain a basic living. So what we need to do is we need to invest in science, technology, research, and in training and education of our people so that we can further develop our goods. Why are we shipping things to the United States to only buy them back? We need to work on the value chain in our country, focus on good, green, made in Canada jobs that makes our economy prosper and our GDP go up.
Thank you. Let me just restate the question. Thank you, Mr. Khan. Let me restate the question here. Unemployment remains the highest it's been in several years, yet many businesses are having difficulty hiring. It's a unique situation. What solutions would you propose to get Kingston working again, Mr. Sahai? And turn your microphone on, Mr. Sahai, and go ahead.
I apologize. Somebody keeps muting me.
It isn't me.
Okay, because
no problem. Go ahead.
Not me. So I think one of the things that we really have to look at is incentivizing people to go back to work. And one way to do that. So if, for example, you're earning $1,000, you don't get your the SERP money, right? And that is just disincentivizing people to go back to work. But if you have a tax system that is gradient, where people are allowed to keep both or some of that money, as well as the SERP money that they have, then it would be incentivized to go back to work. The thing is that we are living in a gig economy. So if, for example, we do have a guaranteed level of income, people will be able to do things like, for example, invest in their music career, their art career. They can take jobs that are less than minimum wage, because we will be subsidizing that income as well.
Thank you. Okay, thank you, Mr. Sahai. Finally, Mr. Oosterhoff, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm proud to present that the Conservative Party of Canada will be introducing the Canadian Job Surge Plan. The government will pay 25% of the salary of new hires for 6 months after the CEWS expires. I think it is important to know that we will also be training and educating and incentivizing people to go back to work by supporting employers in this way. It's really important for us to know that as we merge out of the pandemic, we are focusing on getting Canadians back to work and keeping them there and avoiding future lockdowns by protecting Canadians from a fourth wave. And our focus will be on focusing on sectors that are mostly hit, that we just talked about: hospitality, tourism, and the airlines, everything that is very relevant to Kingston. There's the challenge of getting women and young people back to work, and we need to rebuild and get people back to work, and we're committed to that. So we're supporting the small business that we talked about. To rebuild, we will need thousands of new small businesses, and so we're going to be making that happen. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you to all the candidates. Now let's take a question from the audience. We have one here, and here it is. Although the mandatory vaccine passport is not required for retail, how do each of the parties see small business in Kingston managing this with incoming customers and employees in order to reduce the spread of COVID-19? I'm going to start with Ms. Sale Udall.
So the question is about how do we reduce the spread, even though retail businesses are not required for the vaccine passports?
Correct.
So I think, when we talk about viruses and things like that, yes, people are absolutely worried. We've just been through a collective trauma for 19 months, and a lot of people are still stuck in the state of fear and are worried, and that's natural. Some people have been traumatized by this experience. But when we move forward, we have a lot of health initiatives that can help reduce the spread. The hygiene, when COVID first showed up, I can't believe the number of people that were actually washing their hands and doing those hygiene practices that public health had been sharing with us for many, many years. Finally, everybody was doing it. There's other things that we can be doing as well. I think, boosting our immune system is really good too. So always being in the best health that we can be, so that our immune system can handle any sort of attack. And
thank you. All right, thank you. Let's move on to Mr. Khan.
Thank you, Bill. So when you're speaking about how small businesses are going to implement passport systems in Kingston, first of all, let's not even talk about passports, okay? I mean, ultimately what the government does is the government makes policies, but they don't realize it's easy to make policies when they're spending businesses' money. So businesses are going to have to invest in having staff and personnel. It's already difficult to get staff. Now you got to find someone, stand at the front door and act as a security guard, or outsource the service to somebody else. So ultimately what we need here is, how can we get beyond passports? We need a real leadership effort here. And when I say leadership, I mean leadership. Bill, what's the difference between leadership and management or government? Leadership is the art of getting more out of people than the science of management or government says you can get out of them. We need leadership at this moment. We need to dispel all of these false truths about the vaccine. The vaccine's been around for a long time. It's safe. We've found some complications, but we need to have a leadership effort here to convince people this isn't the second coming of Christ or something from hell. This is an opportunity for us to move beyond a pandemic and get people back to business here. We need good leadership at the top to convince people they need to do this in order for us to move forward. And without that, we're not moving forward.
Thank you, Mr. Khan. I get the feeling I'm going to be quizzed on this later on, but let's move on to Mr. Sahai. You have 1 minute, sir. Go ahead.
So, as a public health epidemiologist, I think we are going through a crisis. And am I on mute again? No.
No, go ahead, sir.
Thank you. So what we need to do, it is all about getting people vaccinated. And if we have to implement a passport, we should do that, because studies have shown that in other countries, if we do that, we will get more people vaccinated. But beyond that, vaccines only help you prevent disease. It's still only 90% effective. And with the Delta variants, it's even less so. So we still need to be very vigilant. We need to wear masks. We need to social distance. We need to we need to have proper hand hygiene. And all of these things will allow us to get the numbers down. Once we get the numbers down, that is when the economy will pick up, when businesses will get into their groove. And
thank you. Thank you, Mr. Sahai. Your time is up. I'm going to repeat the question. Although the mandatory vaccine passport is not required for retail, how do each of the parties see small business in Kingston managing this with incoming customers and employees in order to reduce the spread of COVID-19? Let's move on to Mr. Oosterhoff.
Yeah, thank you for that question. And I guess we often have jurisdictional differences too. Some of this is our provincial matters, and we need to be involved with them too as they build a solid plan for Ontario. I am a local businessman, and I'm proud of what we've been able to establish and the cooperation of our staff. And we work in often essential sectors, and so just as we talked about here, we have the testing kits available, and the practices that we have adopted in the past months have really made it that I believe we're going to make it through this fourth wave. With the vaccinations, which we believe are very important, we can reduce the spread of the virus through all the things that we've learned just by being respectful to each other. And we talked, all our ideas together combined is really what we have to be doing. And we do that when we wear a mask, when we choose distances, when we wash our hands, when we have our vaccinations. This is the way through. And I don't think we have to always say how bad we're doing. I think we're doing great. We should be celebrating that, and we're going to get through this. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Gerritsen.
Well, with all due respect to Waji, I think that the leadership is there. Canada has the highest vaccinated population per capita in the world of any country. The most per capita have been vaccinated. If you haven't been vaccinated, please go get vaccinated. It is absolutely essential to do that. We believe Health Canada when they say the food in the McDonald's bag is safe for you to eat. We can believe Health Canada when they say that a vaccine is safe. In terms of businesses, and to answer the question directly, I think when I heard this question, I thought of Dave McNamara, who owns Merchant Tap House downtown and Union. The Union restaurant. I remember back about a year ago, Dave was struggling to deal with this dilemma of whether or not to let people in who were from out of Kingston. These are business owners that are genuinely worried, not just about their customers, but about the people that work for them. And I think, and I'm extremely proud that, and I know all panelists are today, to have people in our community like this. And I would say to Dave and anybody else that despite the fact there might not be a vaccine passport out there, the Canadian government will ensure proper legislation is in place to allow you to prevent those people from coming in.
Thank you, Mr. Gerritsen. Let's move on to our final question. Actually, time is running short here. Final question from the audience this morning. What federal support for rural broadband in Kingston can you deliver? Let us start with Mr. Khan on this one.
Thank you. I must note that Canada, in terms of vaccinations, is actually not even in the top 10. We're number 11. But regardless, so with respect to rural broadband, this is what we need to do. If you don't mind me saying, I believe that access to information in a democratic world, we're not a fascist or communist country, is how we maintain ourselves as a democracy. How can one make a democratic choice if they don't have access to all the information? So stifling debate, stifling discussion, stifling access to information is something we can't do. What the pandemic really highlighted for us that the business in a post-COVID world will be far more mobile and far more data-driven than what we're traditionally used to. So what can we do as government? We can regulate. We can take the telecommunications giants and say, listen, we're allowing you to have the honey holes of Toronto, Montreal, Vancouver and make money. We're going to regulate you. If you're going to allow you to make money there and operate there, you have to provide the same level of services in rural Canada, and that's how you lead.
Thank you. Mr. Sahai, go ahead.
So information is a right, and it influences our health, our social interactions with each other, especially during a pandemic. So I live in a rural area, and the reason I'm doing this interview here in the office is because my internet out in the country is very unstable. My wife sees patients through that internet, which freezes, and it really is very unstable. So what we need to do is to ensure that we do have fiber optic or whatever technology we have to have high-speed internet. We are also, our leader has said that the telecom companies will have their prices fixed at a level that is fair to them, but also, and more importantly, fair to the consumers themselves. We need to access all, like 5Gs, for example. We need to have information at our hands.
Thank you. Let's move on to Mr. Oosterhoff.
Thank you very much. Well, this certainly is the topic that's in my wheelhouse. Certainly, as a rural councillor, it's probably my biggest file that I've managed for 5 years, and obviously we've hit many log jams with it. And I'm really proud to say that the Conservative Party of Canada's platform is committed to connecting all of Canada, including rural areas, to high-speed internet by 2025. We are setting aside a portion of federal infrastructure funds for projects in the rural areas. I understand exactly the challenges. I live in the countryside. I have dealt with numerous high broadband issues, and we know that there is a serious problem with regulatory burden as well. We need to free up the space. We need to free up regulatory rules and policies that allow access to the broadband width, and I am committed to it. And I know that our party is, and we're going to make things happen. And it's going to be good for Canada, good for our economy, and good for everybody's homes and lives. It's going to be great.
Okay, thank you. Let me just repeat the question. What federal support for rural broadband in Kingston can you deliver, Mr. Gerritsen?
Was on mute. It was going to happen to me eventually. Bill, since 2015, we have invested more than $8 billion as a government into the delivery of high-speed and wireless service across Canada. This has benefited some 400,000 Canadians, a lot of which are in Ontario, rural Ontario settings. But more importantly, what we've committed to in this election is that those who purchase the rights to develop the infrastructure in these various areas have to actually start doing so. We need to ensure that these companies are moving forward with developing and implementing and building that infrastructure. Otherwise, the right has to be taken away from them and given to somebody who will. For all the reasons that my colleagues have mentioned, it is crucial that we ensure that for the success of small businesses and individuals, that they have access to high-speed internet as quickly as possible.
Thank you. Finally, Ms. Sale-Udall.
Thanks. Well, I can definitely identify with that. I live in a rural area. I know Waji and I attended the Wolf Island debate last night, and that was a big concern for Wolf Islanders. And we were asked the exact same thing. What about high-speed internet? The way of the world is everything that we do is run by Wi-Fi and technology. So how do we do that? I also learned from Waji last night that there are ways to get towers, which I didn't know. I really thought it was going to be left up to the service providers, which are lacking, I know, in north of Kingston. But anyway, how do we do that? I'm not quite sure. I did learn Waji had a great answer about bringing these towers in. So if he says it's possible, then it probably is very possible. And if we can make more towers available, or fiber optics, which is a lot better because it's underground, that's also a really good opportunity. That might cost money too. How we get there and how we get that money, hopefully we can decrease spending in other areas, and then we'll have lots of money to be able to do other important issues like internet.
Great, thank you. So we're now going to end our program this morning with closing statements from the candidates. We'll be working in reverse order from our opening statements. 1 minute to close. First up is Mark Garrettson.
Thank you, Bill, and thank you, everybody, for tuning in and participating this morning. I hope that you've had an opportunity to see some of the differences between the candidates here. I think, and I believe that my 6 years specifically representing the community at the federal level, the experience and know-how to advocate within government and how to work with the provincial and municipal counterparts is an advantage that I have, and one that I hope to continue to utilize if I'm re-elected. I will continue to work hard and make sure that we can move our community forward together for everyone. And with that, on September 20th, I'm asking for your vote for me, Mark Garrettson. Thank you, Bill.
Thank you, Mr. Garrettson. And let's move to the closing statement of Gary Oosterhoff.
Thank you. Thanks again for this opportunity. As Kingston and the Islands candidate for the Conservative Party of Canada, I am so privileged to be able to participate with you this morning. Even though I may stumble out of the gate a little bit, I want to say that all the right things to you, my fellow businessmen and women. And it's sometimes in this format, it's hard to speak clearly and effectively, but the most important message I can give you if you are an undecided voter is to see that the Canada's Conservatives are the party of choice in this election. We speak your language and understand what matters most. I speak your language and understand what matters most, and there is no time to waste. Our message and modus operandi will be a kind and caring party where people, families, and businesses come first. Our children and our aging parents matter more than anything, and I want to be the voice and the hands that help make it happen. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you. Vic Sahai, your closing statement, please.
I'd like to take this opportunity.
Your video is turned off. Your camera's turned off, Mr. Sahai. Do you want to turn it back on, or?
Actually, you know what? This is very important to me, so I'm just going to read this statement if it's okay with you. So my camera has
no problem. Sorry to interrupt. You have the full minute now. Go ahead.
Excellent. Actually, I don't think I'm going to have this opportunity to say this, but so what I want to do is I want to take this opportunity to address what's happening in Afghanistan. I want to begin by thanking the Canadian Armed Forces for their service in Afghanistan and acknowledge their deep and personal sacrifice. I can't imagine how the members who served in Afghanistan are feeling right now. I've heard from veterans who are wondering if it is all in vain, the death, the injury, the emotional devastation. I'm here to tell you that what our armed forces did mattered at that time for those people and gave them a brighter and more just future. But hope is fleeting. Right now, I feel that we have abandoned the Afghan people to the Taliban. The NDP believes in keeping their promises made to those who risked their lives, their children's lives, because they believed in our mission of peace and stability. We will work with neighboring countries and our allies to do everything that is possible to get those people out of Afghanistan safely.
Thank you, Mr. Sahai.
Yeah.
And Waji Khan, please.
Bravo Zulu, Vic. Bravo Zulu, buddy.
Thank you.
So, members of the Chamber of Commerce, ask yourselves, from when you first got into business to today, how much has changed? How many new things did you have to learn in order to be successful? The Green Party recognizes that the Chamber is made up of ambitious people who want to not just a chance to flourish without the stranglehold of high bills from companies who pay nearly zero tax. And to me personally, I recognize that you are the job creators. You need the most help to grow and protect Canadian jobs. If the future requires more access, then I'll be your champion to open that pathway and ensure that you can compete. So what I'm asking you, if you like what I'm saying, come to 1057 Midland Avenue, grab a sign, volunteer, make a donation, but most importantly, on September the 20th, you make sure that you vote for Waji Khan to be your member of parliament. Thank you.
Thank you. And now we turn to Shelley Sale-Udall.
I just want to say thank you to Vic for speaking to the Afghanistan situation. I appreciate it. In closing, you'll need to forgive me that although I'm not necessarily well practiced in how to sell myself, I am a real person, just like everybody else, and I am the voice for the People's Party of Canada and Kingston and the Islands. It's important that people understand that as your PPC candidate, I represent a vast number of people in diverse backgrounds, cultures, and ethnicities. We have supporters from all walks of life, and we are not an anti-vax group that, unfortunately, according to some people, we have been brushed with that same paintbrush. This is not true. We support all people's right to choose, and that includes your choice to be vaccinated or not. When it comes down to being a choice, we do not encourage violence or condone behavior, which there's been some news reports about that. We respect and value everyone's individual rights, and we believe in unity, and we believe that in our Canada, we need to return to a united Canada with our rights and freedoms for all.
Thank you. And Ms. Sale-Udall, there was some video breakup during your closing statement, but your message went through loud and clear. And so thanks again to all of our candidates. I'm going to pass things back now to Karen Cross with the Chamber.
You're on mute, Karen.
Of course, I have to end it that way. Thank you, Bill. And thank you to our candidates and to the staff and volunteers who helped make this event happen. A special thank you again to our sponsor, the Kingston Area Real Estate Association. And finally, thanks to everyone who joined us this morning. We hope this helps you in making your voting decision on September 20th. And we hope to see you again in a future chamber event. Check us out at kingstonchamber.ca for a full list. Thank you and have a great rest of your day.